What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a movie that I saw released on VOD on Prime Video a couple of weeks ago. And the poster intrigued me, and I went online and read a little bit about it. And people were calling this an anthology horror film, which I'm a huge fan of anthology horror films, even if they don't always work. I like the early VHS films, I love Trick or Treat. I just think it's really cool when you could have a movie tell multiple stories and kind of bring them all together. And this one is apparently an anthology horror film where all of the stories are connected, which I thought was really interesting. But aside from that, I knew nothing about it, didn't watch a trailer. And the movie I'm going to be telling you about today is Beezel. Beezel is directed by Aaron Fradkin. Over 6 tumultuous decades, three unwitting guests of a cursed New England home stumble upon a sinister secret dwelling beneath the floors, an eternal witch with an insatiable thirst for the souls of the living. So I was really excited to watch this movie, knowing very little about it before I went into it. And this is a movie that started off incredible. I truly thought within the first 15 to 20 minutes of this movie that this was going to be a new classic that was in my rotation consistently. And then it just got worse and worse and worse until the very end of the movie was some of the most laughable garbage that I've watched in recent memory. And so it's completely and totally inconsistent. And it's unfortunate because it's such a cool concept that I think if there was a little bit more thought to, especially how the movie ended or casting some of these characters differently, that it could have worked better overall. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about it today. So this entire film takes place over the course of several years and multiple segments all in this same house. And the initial segment is a husband and wife living in this house with their son, and their son goes into the basement, and we learn there's a witch in the basement. And that is what is recurring throughout this entire film, is this town all knows that there's this witch in the basement. So we get a segment there. We get a segment with the father a little bit older, wanting to tell a story about the death of his son, and he hires a videographer for that. We get a woman living at the house that is the wife of that man, who she's getting very sick and ill, and she has a young nurse coming there to take care of her. We have a new couple moving into that house years and years later. And so there's stories just kind of progressing through time, and each story gives us a little bit more insight into Beezel and how Beezel operates. So like I said, incredible start to this movie, really great idea, and it just fumbles its execution so badly at the halfway point that it becomes borderline unwatchable in moments. I will start with the positives. Love a lot of the attention to detail and the practical effects and design of Beezel as a character. I really liked the simplicity of it. I think it makes the movie much creepier. There's a lot of really great shots, especially in the early segment where you're kind of focusing on something in the background, and it sends chills up your spine. It's not a jump scare laden movie. It's a lot more focused on really creating a sinister and uneasy feeling, especially in the early parts of the movie. There's like raw handheld camera footage at the beginning of the film that feels kind of like sinister, which I really liked. And that's what put me in the mindset of like, oh, I'm really going to enjoy where this goes, especially with kind of the clash in the filmmaking techniques and just creating a very unique environment. The first story is brutal and unforgiving. I also liked the second story a lot with the man hiring the videographer. I really liked the direction that went. The story with the nurse was kind of 50-50 for me. It started out all right, and then it just kind of got a little bit more cliche towards the end. But the story with the married couple ruined the entire film for me. Their performances are horrendous. Both of them, it was like their first time acting, just so unnatural in a way that just kind of pulled me out of the movie entirely. The story is really bland for theirs. There's constant bickering. The emotion all feels very inauthentic. And comparatively to the early parts of the film where everything felt very raw and realistic, it felt so hokey. Like we went from a really well thought out and well made indie horror movie to something that felt like it would have been straight on the Sci-Fi Channel in the worst way possible. And because of that inconsistency and where the film goes at the end, it just makes it impossible to enjoy as a complete and total experience. Because if you're going to create an anthology horror film where each and every segment connects together, you really have to make all of them effective for the movie to work as a whole. And that last segment was just awful. I mean, those actors were phoning it in. So, like so many of the scares they were going for felt really cheap compared to the rest of the movie. And there's a lot of great scares early on that I liked. I really like the way they create mystery around this house and like how the kids in the neighborhood will like run in and spray paint or they'll like chant songs outside and poems outside of the house. I like all that. I think it creates a world where it's not overly expositional. You're learning through different scenes that you're watching. And that's my favorite kind of anthology horror movie is where you can have a concept, but you're learning more about it through little scenes and less of just like heavy exposition dumps. And you can just live in that specific segment. And I liked that early on in the movie. But like I said, towards the middle to tail end of the film, it just started really falling apart in the worst way possible. And I think if they would have rewritten and redone that entire back half of the movie, it would have been very successful overall. But instead, you only get part of a good movie, which is so upsetting because I just kept thinking back to those first few segments and how effective it was and how genuinely it creeped me out. And then it just got worse and worse and worse. And that always sucks. I hate when a movie starts off really strong and just falls apart. And I'm not saying that this is the worst thing ever made by any means. There are enough redeeming qualities here that I think it's worth one watch. I just think that if you watch that last segment, you're just going to find it so incredibly grating and irritating and wonder why the director ever took it in that direction in the first place. And I get it's an indie movie. You can't necessarily hire the best of the best when it comes to performers, but the actors early on in this film did such an amazing job, and I just felt like that couple was phoning it in. It just left a sour taste in my mouth and really kind of took any of the horror or suspense away for me. So have you seen Beezel? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I was very disappointed in this movie, especially with how incredible of a start that it had. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.